We're back, baby. I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, it is primary election day in Washington. The question is, will voters turn away from destructive one-party rule? Plus, we have some stunning audio to play for you of a Washington state ferry captain who used his position in court to defend his son who was accused of possessing child pornography. You're not going to believe this.
What I'm telling you is my word is my bond. I operate hundreds of millions of dollars worth of our taxpayer money, equipment, and I protect hundreds and thousands of lives annually.
And is the writing finally on the wall for the head of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families? That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here on this primary election day. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. When the ceiling can't hold us, here we go now. This is the moment. We can't be held back. We can't be held down. Bob Ferguson, your efforts to thwart our broadcast were unsuccessful. Daryl's here too, just monitoring. What's the mic over there in the corner for him? Do I hit the mic on? Try that.
Hello.
Wow, Daryl.
There it is.
Good. Can we get it?
In the building.
10
there
hours.
We go. 10 hours.
10 hours of
from
work.
Bellingham.
Drove from Bellingham. 10 hours in studio. Full studio meltdown has been fixed.
Made it work.
Without getting into all the nerdy stuff. Good job, Daryl.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right. Happy primary election day, everyone. For the love of God. If you do not have your ballot in by now, I'm either disappointed or maybe you've been busy and you're planning to drop it in a drop box by 8 p.m. So that's what you have to do just in case you're not sure. Please don't put it in a USPS mailbox at this point because remember, it has to be postmarked today. So there's never a guarantee that they're going to pick that thing up. I guess if you don't have a drop box somewhere close to you and you want to bring it to USPS, hand it to them and say, will this get postmarked today and get a verbal confirmation from them? That's fine, but I recommend dropping it in a ballot drop box because what they do, they're open till 8, they close them at 8, and then they take the ballots out of there. So please get your ballots in because even after the long weekend, so yesterday when we put out a show, the return statistics statewide were 15% of voters, which is just insane. I mean, I know that, people were saying, well, that hasn't included all the folks who dropped their ballots in over the weekend. And so, but it was still lagging behind that point in previous primary elections of this nature. And now it's only 20%, 20.5%, even with all the ballots that came in over the weekend. And so that's just not ideal. And I mean, the bottom line is you can't complain if you don't vote. And we say it over and over again. So 20% is not where we want to be. And you have the ideologues who are absolutely going to vote for. So folks who are reasonable, independent minded, critical thinkers, please God, get your ballots in because I don't need to have any more stress in my life this week. So speaking of ballots, voting, we are going to have a live primary night special tonight at 8:30 p.m. right here. The first ballot drop and the only ballot drop of the evening will happen at 8 p.m. So we like to kind of let those results soak in, assess the situation. We'll come to you live at 8:30 p.m. to help you through the big races, answer any questions you have about races that perhaps we don't bring up or that haven't been covered, ones that are important to you. So please join us for that across all of our platforms. It is not a subscription live special. Anyone can watch YouTube, Patreon, Locals, X, or Facebook, 8:30 p.m. Pacific time right here. So races to watch today. As candidates go out and make their final pitch to voters. Obviously, the governor's race is near and dear to my heart. I think that a Bob Ferguson governorship would put this state on the path of no return. We're already dangerously close to that point. He is a fourth term of the Inslee administration, and I think if he gets into office, it's going to be very hard to get him out. We don't have a limit on the number of terms you can serve as governor. We know that Jay Inslee served 3 terms as governor, so Bob Ferguson, I think, would do the same, or he'd try to run for the presidency. Maybe I'll give him, I don't know, what do you think? 1 term before he runs for the presidency? Half a term before he runs for the presidency? Something like that. He'll probably run for the presidency in 2028 if he wins. So let's not give him that joy. I gotta say though, so he was out yesterday making a final pitch to voters, and he put up this video from Green Lake. And I guess it shouldn't surprise me that he decided that his final pitch to voters was going to be a flat out lie.
Because I'm proud I'm the only candidate running for governor who does not accept money from large corporations or corporate PACs. Why? Because I believe in the power of a grassroots campaign and centering the people in the decisions I make as an attorney general and as governor if I'm elected.
Yeah, so we've already pointed out that that's a lie. It was a lie the first time he said it. It was a lie the second time he said it. It was a lie when he put it in a TV ad. And it's a lie when he takes a video at Green Lake Park and says it. And it shows that he has no regard for the people who he's looking to serve when he just flat out refuses to be honest, especially in the final day of voting in the primary election. And just in case you need the receipts again, I mean, we pointed out that in previous campaigns, Bob Ferguson has indeed taken money from corporations and corporate PACs like AT&T, Microsoft, Walmart, Expedia, McDonald's, Weyerhaeuser, Boeing, Yahoo, AOL, Google, Anheuser-Busch, BNSF, Pfizer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things that I said back when he first told this lie is, if he were willing to be a little more nuanced, he could get away with this. If he were willing to say, hey, I have taken corporate PAC money in previous election cycles in my races for attorney general. I have now moved away from that. Here's why. And I won't be taking any corporate PAC money in the race for governor. Then that's the truth. And that's a very different thing. And that shows that he, one, cares about honesty and integrity, and that he's willing to admit that maybe he did something he no longer agrees with. But that's not what he's doing. He is holding himself up there as holier than thou. I don't take corporate PAC money, when he has lined his campaign pockets with corporate PAC money for many, many years. I would also point out, now I can't tell you if these are big corporations or small corporations based on just the figures, but Bob Ferguson has taken more than twice as much money from the business sector in this election, in the 2024 campaign for governor, according to the PDC filings. He has gotten $276,000 in donations from businesses, where Dave Reichert has gotten $132,000 in donations from businesses. So let's not act like he won't take money from businesses or corporations. That's just a lie. It says a lot about him that that's the lie he's going to tell in making a final pitch to voters. One other thing that stood out to me in the race for governor, remember what Bob Ferguson has been saying in his TV ads? And to me, like, I get it. You guys were in agreement. We don't want Bob Ferguson to be governor. I mean, there might be a few people watching who disagree, but I think based on, comments and polling that we do on the show every day, I think it's pretty clear that you guys are in the same, position as I am, where that would be a very, very dangerous thing. But for people who do want Bob Ferguson to be governor, I would just ask them, like, does it not matter to you that he lies to you, that he deceives you, that he gaslights you? Because to me, that bothers me. Like Donald Trump, for instance. I'm probably going to vote for Donald Trump in November. I mean, things have changed since I, made that pledge. Nothing has changed in terms of who I'm voting for. But I've said that I think that, yeah, Donald Trump has a track record of lying. A lot of candidates and a lot of politicians have a track record of lying. But the difference is, like, I'm willing to call him out when he lies. Might I still vote for him? Yeah, because he's, like, the only option. I'm not voting for Kamala Harris. But that doesn't mean that he gets a free pass from me on his lies. So I'd like to see more Democrats, even if they're going to end up voting for Bob Ferguson, to at least call him out for lying and deceiving. There was this article in the Seattle Times, and I just saw the headline, and I'm like, oh, this is a good article. Like, let's see what Bob Ferguson has to say for himself. The headline, while governor candidates want to hire more police, but their plans differ. And in here, I really thought and hoped that the Seattle Times would really hold Bob Ferguson to task for all of a sudden claiming to care about police staffing. Like, he came out and had this ad where he's got a really stern face, and he's like, we're 50th in the nation for the number of police officers per capita. That's unacceptable, and I'll change it as governor. And what I pointed out is, you can try to throw money at the problem, Bob Ferguson, but if officers and troopers don't want to work for you, then you're not going to be able to fix the problem. And they don't want to work for him. They do not want to work for him. So I really had hoped that the Seattle Times would use this article as an opportunity to really press Bob Ferguson on that ad and on all of a sudden acting like the public safety candidate after 12 years of just not genuinely caring about public safety as the state's chief law enforcer. So I was like, oh, good, like they're going to ask him things. And then I read this sentence: Ferguson, declined to be interviewed for this story. I was like, how can you be the guy who's holding yourself up as the public safety candidate for governor, and the Seattle Times is doing a whole story on your public safety plan and you refuse to be interviewed? Like, that tells me that you want to talk about your public safety plan in your political ads on TV and on your campaign website, but you don't want to subject yourselves to questions that a journalist might have you. You know, and I like Jim Brunner at the Times, who wrote this story. I think he, you know, occasionally can be hard on candidates when he needs to be hard on candidates. But so I don't know the kind of questions he would have asked Bob Ferguson, but I think it's very telling that when his primary thing he's saying he's going to do is make the state more safe, he said that's the biggest issue is public safety, that in the final days of the campaign, he's not willing to sit in front of a reporter and answer questions about his public safety plan. Very telling. A couple other races that we're watching, and in fact, one of them is tied to our daily subscriber show poll, which I'll get to in just a moment. A couple of the congressional races we're going to have our eye on in our live election coverage tonight. The 4th Congressional District and the 3rd Congressional District are very, very interesting. So over in the 4th Congressional District, which has a big part of central eastern Washington, of course, that's a seat currently held by Dan Newhouse. Dan Newhouse, I believe, is the last remaining Republican in office who voted to impeach Donald Trump. So he voted to impeach, which was sort of a surprise to some because he's fairly conservative. He supported Donald Trump, but he came on my show, basically said like, hey, I don't agree with how we handled January 6th and all of that. And I voted to impeach him and now I'm moving on. So obviously you have a wing of the party that has never forgiven him for that. And so that's how you ended up with Jared Sessler as a challenger. Jared Sessler is a more Trump-aligned Republican who's running against Dan Newhouse. And then how that got even more interesting is Tiffany Smiley joined the race very late, like right before the filing deadline. Tiffany Smiley, who ran for Senate against Patty Murray 2 years ago, lost by quite a bit. Polling in that race was horrible. It showed them neck and neck, and then she lost by double digits. She all of a sudden joined this race, and I just don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know who she takes more votes from. All of a sudden, she's acting like a MAGA candidate, where in her U.S. Senate campaign, like we had her on the show, and she didn't try to distance herself per se from Trump, but really didn't want to take a position on him because she was worried about doing that in a statewide race. Well, now over in the 4th, you know, aligning yourself with Trump is popular. So she's kind of pretended to be a different person during this campaign, which I haven't particularly liked. At least Jared Sessler has owned through and through his support for Donald Trump, and Dan Newhouse hasn't backed away from his impeachment vote. So I'm very curious to see what happens in the 4th Congressional District. Remember, the top 2 advance past the primary tonight. And then the 3rd Congressional District, a lot of spending in the 3rd. That's the district closest to Portland. And remember, that was held by Jamie Herrera Butler, a Republican. And then she voted to impeach Trump. And then she lost her seat because there was a split amongst Republicans. They put up Joe Kent 2 years ago, who was saying he was a more Trump-aligned candidate. And that split between the two of them, Jamie Herrera Butler and Joe Kent, allowed a Democrat to take the 3rd Congressional District from Republicans, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. So Joe Kent is running again in the district I would say he lost for Republicans 2 years ago. And then you have Leslie Llewellyn, who we've had on the show before, who is a more moderate Republican option. So we can keep a close eye on the 3rd, and there's a ton of other races that we have as well. But to me, one of the most critical races tonight is the race for Attorney General, because in the race for governor, unless something crazy happens, I think we kind of know it's Bob Ferguson and Dave Reichert who are going to advance past the primary. But in the AG's race, there's a sticky situation afoot. So you got Pete Serrano, the Republican candidate, who will advance. But then you've got 2 pretty strong Democratic contenders in terms of their viability as candidates. Nick Brown, a former U.S. attorney, and State Senator Manka Dhingra, one of the furthest to the left members of the state legislature who has been horrible for public safety, who would be a disastrous attorney general. I am terrified about her advancing past the primary election. So that's a huge question tonight. And in fact, I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll about what scenario after tonight would concern you the most? Like, what would be which would be the worst of these two outcomes? A Bob Ferguson governorship or a Manka Dhingra attorney general? Nicole, do you have an opinion? What would be worse? If we woke
that's
up
a real toss-up.
the day after the November election, what would be worse for you in your mind?
Well, if there was no Governor Bob Ferguson, then I wouldn't be quite as worried about Dingra, right? So if it was a Governor Reichert, then him having to deal with Manka Dingra, But so I would say Governor Bob Ferguson.
You know,
is scarier.
I've got to agree. But it's still, the Manka Dingra thing is terrifying to me.
If both of those scenarios play out, ugh.
Like, let's hope it's one or the other, right? Not both. But if both, we're
toast.
moving. We're packing up.
We're toast.
I'm going to Texas or Florida or something. I know I said I'd never give up on you guys, but if we got a Manka Dingra Attorney General
gotta think of our happiness.
and a Bob Ferguson governorship, like, first of all, I'd be like Washington's most wanted woman. They'd both try to ruin my business and my life, and I don't know what my life would look like after that. Most people are agreeing that it would be a Governor Bob Ferguson, though, and certainly the governor has his hands on more things, right? I mean, an attorney general, you are an independently elected official. As we've seen with Bob Ferguson, you can do an awful lot of damage to people's lives, so that would be bad, but I think a lot of people agree Governor Bob Ferguson, point of no return. Timothy says, great question. It's like, would I rather be eaten by a wolf or a shark? That is a good question. Shark, because I think that's just, it would be quicker, fewer bites, and also like a cooler story, like, oh, hey, how'd Brandi die? She got eaten by a shark. And, you know, a little cooler. Let me see. Tamara Alva says, Dingra's a hot mess, but Ferguson will blow us out of the water. Look, if Dingra makes it through, we've got more stories in the hopper on Manka Dingra. So it is not going to be a pleasant road for her to November, and it's a unpleasant road of her own making. Let me see. Matt Gilbert, Bob, as he would be both a vindictive governor and the puppet master for a Democratic AG. Yeah, that's very true. Harold Burns, a tough choice, but I think ultimately Manka could do more damage with her selective enforcements and malicious prosecutions, not to mention the fact that she would actively undermine any of our initiatives in court. Very, very true. Also, you mentioned malicious prosecutions. The AG can prosecute police officers. We've seen Bob Ferguson try to do that 4 times. So you think that that would get any better under Manka Dingra? No. Any officer who uses deadly force in the state of Washington, Manka Dingra is going to try to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. You can absolutely be guaranteed of that. So again, we have our live election coverage happening today at 8:30 p.m. So we're not going to overwhelm you with election-related things on the live show today. And we have a hell of a story to get to next. You guys are going to lose your minds. Do me a favor before I get to it. Go get a piece of tape, like duct tape. I want you to strap it around your chin to hold it in place, because if you don't, your jaw is going to absolutely be on the floor as mine was when I heard this piece of audio.
That was going.
Oh, okay. It's just helping them out. All right, first, if you're in the market to sell your home, now is a good time if you're thinking about doing it at some point in 2024, because the Fed is likely to drop interest rates, especially after the market crash that we saw. They're under a lot of pressure to do so. And so then you're going to have more people who are going to try to put their home on the market. Right now, the inventory is low, and that's when you get into those bidding wars. Here's our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com.
King County, median $1 million. Homes are still selling very, very quickly. If you want to do something this year, give me a call. I'd love to start the process now. I think that things will be moving very swiftly through probably October. And then as the election starts to come out, get closer, people always pump the brakes. But for all of you who are out there that are thinking like, oh, I can't sell my home because I need X amount, you're probably at the peak right now. It's probably worth more than it's ever been than previous times. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, so visit our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. He'll start by giving you a free market analysis just so you can set your expectations depending on your home, where it is, etc. You can also use their home value calculator right there on the website to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, buckle up, folks. So Nicole had brought this story up to me yesterday, like, hey, we got an email about this. Do you want to do it on the show? We had an interview already scheduled. And I said, well, let's tape the interview and we'll save it for tomorrow because we've got election stuff today and we had some other interviews ready to go. And then Nicole played me about an hour before airtime. Nicole played me a clip I'm about to play for you. My jaw hit the floor. It didn't come back up for almost an hour after. And I said, we have to get that on the show today. That is absolutely insane. So let me set this up for you because it has to do with a pretty disturbing criminal case out on Friday Harbor. So this is from the Journal of the San Juan Islands. And really, this story has not been really publicized at all. I mean, this happened just a couple days ago. It was in a couple of these small island news publications, but that's it. So the headline, Friday Harbor man charged with 4 counts of possessing explicit images of children. Sheriff Peter contacts state regarding father's comments in court. So the article gets into the case against 35-year-old Richard Brandt of Friday Harbor, who has been charged with 2 counts of dealing in depictions of a minor engaged in sexually explicit conduct in the first degree, and 2 counts of possession of depictions of a minor engaged in sexually explicit conduct in the first degree. It says in November of 2023, the Seattle Police Department's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force assigned a cyber tip case to the San Juan County Sheriff's Office. The task force's initial investigation revealed that the suspect resided in San Juan County. A social media platform alerted authorities after Richard Brandt allegedly downloaded and shared images that depicted sexually explicit images of prepubescent children. So that is obviously, as with any cases involving child pornography, that those charges are very serious. The allegations are very serious and disturbing. So Richard Brandt is in court for his first appearance. And what happens at first appearance is both sides will make their arguments for bail. And as you guys know, and as I know from covering the courts for years, oftentimes you'll hear from maybe family members of a victim or family members of the accused. And they will plead their case to a judge to say, hey, if you let him out on bail or without bail, then, I'll be responsible for him. I'll watch him. I'll make sure he gets to work or whatever it is. And that was the case for Richard Brandt as well. Richard Brandt's father, all we have is audio, but we do have a picture of this happening in court. So Richard Brandt's father comes to court to make an argument that the bail should be lowered or maybe that he should be able to go to his father's home on house arrest. And he introduces himself to the court like this.
My name is Albert Brandt, B-R-A-N-T.
Thank you.
I'm a captain of the Inter-Island Ferry here in Friday Harbor. I'm based out of Friday Harbor.
So he is, for those only watching the show today, he is in his ferry captain uniform. He introduces himself. He's just there as this suspect's father, as Albert Brandt, and then goes on to say, I'm the captain of the Inter-Island Ferry, which are the ferries operated by the Washington State Department of Transportation that go between islands. So he shows up, son accused of possessing child pornography, in his ferry captain uniform, introduces himself as a ferry captain. And as if that's not bad enough, I'm going to play this entire clip for you. He goes to make a plea to the judge about why his son's bail should be low. I'm going to play that plea for you in full.
The state of Washington trusts me with hundreds of millions of dollars with our taxpayer equipment on a daily basis. I have transported millions of human passengers over the last 40 years as being one of the highest ranked captains that the United States government allows a license to be proffered to. I am a upstanding member of this community, and I live right up the road. I live on a farm. My son could be helping me on my farm. I need his help right now rather than languishing in a jail that's not even going to be in this county. It would create a hardship for me to be able to see him if he's going to be in Island County or Skagit County. You understand what a ferry ride takes to get over there and back, and it would take me out of a day of work. If I'm not working, the ferry's not running here. Okay, so there's a lot of what Miss Barnett is proposing is a $500,000 bail. I feel is quite onerous in the fact that he's going to be here on the island. He can be monitored. The Ron Krebs knows me well. Mike Harrison knows me well. I'm a well-known individual to these people with the sheriff's department. I communicate quite often with incidents we have on the boat. So I'm familiar with them. They know me. Ron's been to my house several times. I used to live next door to him. I'm not a nefarious actor. I'm easily found. I'm an open book. My property is easily viewed. It's not hidden. I'm on 10 acres right off of Douglas Road, right up the street. My son is probably one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet. And he is no flight risk. He's taken an oath, as I did some 40 years ago, to uphold the laws, and he's going to do it. He's going to be here. If they want to monitor him, they can put a monitoring device on him, but where's he going to go? He has to get on a ferry and go somewhere. So it would be pretty hard to escape San Juan Island if they're going to be monitoring, in my opinion. So what I'm telling you is my word is my bond. And that's the truth. I operate hundreds of millions of dollars worth of our taxpayer money, equipment, and I protect hundreds and thousands of lives annually in my business. I'm a pretty upright, standing citizen to take care of my son here.
That is a Washington State ferry captain, state employee, in uniform, telling a judge that if she doesn't let his son go without bail on charges of possessing and distributing child pornography, that the people living on the island will be out of luck. Because if he has to go visit his son in jail and he's the ferry captain, then the ferry's not going anywhere. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much in that clip to dissect. So many things that are horribly wrong to say, my son is the nicest person you'd ever want to know. Your son is accused of possessing and distributing depictions of prepubescent children, pornographic images. And not only that, sits there and says, I know all these people, the sheriff's office, they've been to my house. I mean, any one of those things is completely inappropriate for a state employee, a ferry captain, to be doing in that context. But all of them together is just about the wildest damn piece of audio we have ever played on this show. So the only reason we know about this and that we have it on the show today is because of the San Juan County Sheriff, Eric Peter. So he wasn't in court, but immediately after this happened, he was told about it. And he was furious. Understandably so. He was livid. So not only did he speak out about it on their social media pages, but he immediately contacted, via email, lawmakers for that area of the state and the Washington State Department of Transportation to make sure that they all knew what this ferry captain had done in court. And San Juan County Sheriff Eric Peter is nice enough to also join us today on Undivided to talk about it all. When you listened to the clip, what was your reaction?
Oh my God, I cannot believe this is coming out of his mouth in court, wearing his uniform for the Washington State Ferries. The other official in our building I was talking to was just as shocked. And I said, this would not be tolerated in our agency. If someone did something this egregious, wearing our uniform that far outside of policy, dealt with immediately.
Would they be working for you still?
Oh, no.
So I understand a father coming to court to advocate for his son. I get that.
I do too.
I've covered courts for a long time. I've seen that many, many times. Obviously, when you do it as a captain, and when you talk about your work in the process of doing it, it takes on another tone. Were there elements of what he said that bothered you the most?
Yes. One was, I understand, I fully understand, trying to be there and support your child if they're going through something like this. The legal system can be scary to some people, right? And it is a difficult time in people's lives. But to come across after being told we're not discussing facts and downplay the seriousness of the allegations to only 2 photos. I mean, I couldn't recite word for word every word in the RCWs, but I'm pretty sure there's not an exemption for just 2. And then to somehow, in the tone and inflection of the voice, appear to not just me, but many other people that our already unstable transportation system somehow would be delayed further if he has to go visit him off island is just reprehensible. I mean, our citizens, our community members here, they don't just rely on it for personal transportation. We have a large elderly population that needs to get from their other islands over here to the doctor. We have kids that travel to school over here. They need to get to school. We have people's livelihood. People on other islands that are ferry served come over here and work, and vice versa. They go from here to Orcas and Lopez to do work. And that's going to be a hardship on them.
I'm that part to me. I mean, I was, as I am now, speechless about it, because it's not just an insinuation. That's what he said, is if he has to visit his son in jail off island who's being held for accusations of child porn, that, well, I guess the ferry just won't run. And like everybody will just be stuck on the island. So you, oh, go ahead.
I've been doing this for over 29 years now. Could you imagine the backlash and I've had plenty of people say things that they're not happy with me or they're not happy with the agency, whether it's warranted or not. Could you imagine the backlash if someone in law enforcement said, well, I hope we're not busy. I hope we're not too short-staffed to be able to show up to help you. I would be mortified if one of our officers or deputies said that.
Now, he also, I don't think he named you specifically, but he said the sheriff, which I'm assuming he's referring to you. He's talking about how well connected he is in the community, among the sheriff's office and with the sheriff. Do you know him well, this captain?
I don't. I may have met him. The first name that he said was the former sheriff. And he's the deputy here now. The other one is our undersheriff. And I don't know what definition or context of no he's using, but our undersheriff lives on Orcas. So does our chief criminal deputy. They ride the inter-island ferry frequently to come over here to work. And when that ferry is not running, they're stuck on Orcas Island. Unless we want to use our sheriff's boat that's on Orcas Island to come over here so they can do admin work. Now we don't have a boat immediately available to respond on Orcas Island. We have to leave San Juan and head over there to do something.
Yeah. So you aren't just here, complaining on the podcast. I mean, rightfully so, but you have reached out to leadership with the State Department of Transportation. Why did you feel compelled to do that?
As an employer and a leader of an organization, if this was one of our employees, I would want to know immediately to deal with it. And I felt I had a duty to let them know, hey, your employee is showing up in his uniform that you issue everybody, quoting his position with their agency and making these arguments. I understand showing up and supporting your son or your child in regular clothes, but to come in and do that in your organization's uniform, I would be shocked if they didn't have a policy against that.
Have you heard from them in terms of what the punishment might be or what action they're planning to take? And we're reaching out to them as well.
I got one email thanking me for sending them the information. They weren't aware of it, and they're opening an investigation.
Man, you also reached out to lawmakers, right? Anything back from them?
I did, and no responses yet.
Wow. Sheriff Peter, what do you think should happen from here? What do you want to see happen?
I just want to see our ferry system running and make sure our citizens and our community members are able to move around and go to work and get the kids to school and get to their doctor's appointment without fear of feeling like there's a vendetta and our system is not going to run to transport us around. I have not always been in a position of leadership at the top level. I spent many years as the little man and either didn't have the stage and the microphone or didn't have the position to stand up for the people in our organization and the people in our community. And now that I do, I'm going to stand up and say, this isn't right. It doesn't matter if it's this situation or another situation.
Yeah, and good for him. That's San Juan County Sheriff Eric Peter, who, again, I don't think that we would know about this story had he not raised holy hell about it, and took the step to email the state, to email state lawmakers to speak out about it, about this ferry captain. I mean, it's just about the most insane story we've ever had on the show. And again, if this was a dad going in the capacity as a father, regardless of what his son, how egregious the crime was that his son was accused of, going to court and saying, hey, I'll watch him, he could come work on my farm, whatever it is, this would be a non-story. This would be a non-story. But instead, he put on his ferry captain uniform, introduced himself as a ferry captain for the state of Washington, suggested that the people of San Juan County would just be stuck on the island if his son didn't get a lower bail. It's insane. It is insane. We reached out this morning to the Washington State Department of Transportation. I will say they very promptly returned Nicole's email. She had two questions. One was, is it true that if he has to go visit his son in jail, then the ferry just won't run that day and people are stuck on the island? And then the second question is the obvious, what do you make of what he said in court? Is this appropriate? Are you taking any action? So the state ferry system got back to Nicole and basically told you that they're
going to meet about it.
They're going to meet about it, and then they're going to respond to our questions. I mean, obviously they were aware of it already because the sheriff made sure they were aware of it. But we very much look forward to hearing what the state is going to say. And heck, if it is true that if this ferry captain can't captain the boat that day, that there is no boat, then that is also a ridiculous part of this story and shows how absolutely devastating the ferry system is.
I mean, we're all aware they are short on captains.
Right.
So I do understand that there will be a lack of captains, and that is a problem, just as any of us. If I couldn't be here, you would be short a Nicole, right?
Yeah.
But that's not to be used in court.
Well, no, you don't hold the whole island hostage because your son allegedly possessed child pornography and sent it to people. And now, woe is you, you might have to visit him in jail.
Well, and that's the thing.
So
if you are scheduled to work, you better be working.
Right.
Sorry. You can visit your son on your days off, which I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I imagine that you get a couple days off, right?
Right.
So work your schedule around your son's visitation, and don't hold the whole, or threaten to hold a whole island hostage.
And
so it's
keep
just
saying
insane.
Son as if it's like a child, but this
35
is a 35-year-old man.
He's the same age as
so-
me. I mean, I'm 36, but can I round down for a while? Yes. 36, 5-year-old man who's accused of something very serious. So this story is insane. Thank Nicole for playing me the clip before I decided, because I was ready to push it to tomorrow because I just hadn't heard it. And then I heard it. I was like, oh my God, no, today. And so we were in a scramble the last hour of the show to get it on. But thank you to Sheriff Eric Peter, who taped with us really quick before the show began, and for caring enough about the people he serves to say something about it. Ridiculous, crazy, crazy story. The comments were just people, emojis like I cannot believe this. Just wild. All right. Spokane is the new Seattle. Did you know that? So, we always have this narrative that, the eastern side of the state and the western side of the state are totally different, and you might as well split the state in two at the Cascades, but that's not necessarily true. Spokane is getting more blue by the day. They have a blue mayor now, and their city council in Spokane is actually very progressive. I would argue maybe even more progressive than Seattle's current council, because in Seattle, we had enough of the crazy, so they kind of veered back toward the middle just a little bit. The middle is relative, obviously, but they're moderate for Seattle. Spokane apparently feels like it needs to do the Seattle experiment, even though we already did that. Like we did that for you. You don't have to do it, but they're choosing to kind of do it anyway. And so, you think of a lot of the Seattle policies and the ones that have been controversial over the last 5 years, and now you're going to start to see those pushed in Spokane. One of those has to do with rent control, and they've already put through some onerous burdens on landlords, but now there is a council member in Spokane, this is from our friends at the Center Square, who is floating commercial rent control, despite obvious potential legal challenges about that. So you hear about it with residential rent control, right? And it's something they tried to pass in Olympia, but it wouldn't have applied to commercial properties. So now if you're a business and you have a commercial lease, there is at least one council member in Spokane who wants to have caps on increases in terms of the amount of notice that you have to be given before they can increase your rent. And look, I'm pro business. We rent a commercial space. And so certainly I understand how expensive that can be and what a big chunk of your overhead operating costs it is. But similar to residential tenant protections, it can have the opposite of the intended impact if it's not well thought through. For instance, when you push through policies that are designed to help tenants, but what it results in are landlords deciding they're going to sell their property because they don't want to deal with it anymore, then you have a rental unit out of the pool when we already have a housing shortage. And so this is, or would be, if Spokane moves forward with it, a big signal to commercial property owners that maybe they need to sell their commercial properties before Spokane goes even further down the Seattle rabbit hole. So Sean Flynn with the Rental Housing Association of Washington joins us every week to talk about these issues. And actually, he's in Spokane today. So this was a perfect issue to talk to him about on the show. Sean Flynn, welcome back to Undivided.
Hey, thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, interesting day for you guys. So you're opening up, or you're moving into an office in Spokane, and the timing is great because today we're going to talk about the city of Spokane, one councilman in particular, floating the idea to extend some of their renter protections to commercial properties. So
yeah,
have you heard of this? I mean, we talk about it with residential properties and potentially rent control. Have you heard a proposal like this to extend rent control to commercial properties?
have I heard of one of these before? Yeah, this idea was floated in Seattle at one point, and even Seattle decided that it was not the best idea. But Spokane has a much further, more progressive council now than Seattle does, which I think many folks in Spokane would be shocked to hear. But that's the truth of it. And I'm sitting in our Spokane office because RHA has merged with the LLA over in Spokane, which was a regional housing provider group, and we're excited to be here and help them navigate the maze that the regulations that their city council may enact present some challenges for the housing providers over here. Specifically to this ordinance, the council member Zapone has expanded what has traditionally been a residential notice period for rent increases. So if it's below 3%, he wants 120 days notice. And if it's above 3%, he wants 180 days notice. On top of that, on a separate ordinance that's been floated around, he's looking at what appears to be a vacancy tax, a fee that you would pay to the city to keep if your property were vacant for a certain period of time. RHA is opposed to both of these. And there's a lot of chatter amongst smarter legal minds than I about the legality specifically around the what we're referring to as the rent control light bill, the notice bill.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the vacancy tax thing in a moment, because that's just bizarre to me. So I have a different set of questions for that one.
Yeah.
But, they might argue, and it is fascinating that Seattle kind of veered back toward the middle and Spokane's like, let's try to be Seattle for a little while. I'm sort of like, please don't. But people might argue, well, gosh, if you have commercial real estate, then you're okay giving more notice. Like this is not going to be a problem for you.
Yeah, someone might think that who has never been involved in a commercial lease. So commercial leases are very different than residential leases. They're generally for much longer periods of time, and they have most of them have a rent schedule that adjusts over time. So you negotiate your rent with your landlord over a 5-year lease, a 7-year lease. 10-year leases are not uncommon, and so a notice provision inside a notice provision that is statutory, that's going to sit on top of your already pre-existing negotiated contract, doesn't make a lot of sense. So I really think I'm hoping Councilmember Zappone will rethink this once he hears from folks who work in the industry more. I think he's trying to use a tool to effectuate something that is not the right tool for what he's trying to get at.
What do you think he's trying to get at?
I think what he's, and again, I don't want to speak for the council member, but I think what he's concerned about is that some of the smaller shops and businesses in Spokane have felt the bite of rent increases on the commercial side as well over the last several years. And, you know, as we all know, nothing has gotten cheaper in the last 4 years, right? Inflation is running rampant. And so I think he's looking to protect his small business core, which is an admirable thing to do. And we want to help him do that. But this is not the way you do it, because this will land the ordinance in court likely, won't provide immediate relief for his small businesses. And by the time this thing gets sorted out, the small businesses will not receive the relief they need, and they'll probably be out of business. So there are better ways to help support his core. This isn't one of them.
I know how to dramatically reduce the cost of lease spaces per square foot. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. So what you do is you embrace progressive policies like Seattle did, and then nobody wants to run a business in your city, and then you drop the lease rates to like $15 a square foot.
Yeah. Ruining the local economy is a great way to make things less expensive.
Yeah,
you know, and I will say that Spokane passed by initiative a measure one, I think it was, or Prop 1, that if enforced would give a lot of relief to the business core who are dealing with rampant drug use and bad behavior from folks experiencing homelessness all over the downtown core. A rent increase is not that big of a deal if you're making money as a small business. And I think the larger issue here is that Spokane's business core needs help, and capping rents or setting strange notice provisions on top of pre-existing agreed contractual agreements doesn't solve your fundamental issues that people don't want to come downtown.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. It's like in Seattle, you can ruin the city and make it a drug den and a crime den. And yeah, the lease rates go down for businesses, but nobody wants them anyway. I mean, we chose not to open our podcast in Seattle for that very reason. Like, we could have got a very big space in a prime location, but we weren't going to deal with all the negative things that came along with that. And so I agree with you that addressing that for small businesses in Spokane will do more for them than, helping give them a little more notice on an increase in the cost of their lease. Let me ask you about this vacant thing. So the occupancy rates, to my understanding, are still fairly low. So they're saying that if you own a commercial space and you can't find someone to lease it, that you have to pay for the privilege of it being vacant?
Effectively, yeah. So it's a several $100 fee. And inside that ordinance, I believe there's also sort of some standards at which that they would like the property to be kept up, which is not uncommon. We see that in building code all the time, right? If a property is vacant, you have to fence it, you have to secure it, you have to protect it from weather, which is all fine and good things. The issue there is the fee, because when a commercial property is vacant, it's not making any money. And so you're still paying, as a property owner, you're still paying the tax, you're still paying the insurance, right? Adding more cost to holding a vacant entity doesn't make the housing, in this case, the commercial property owner, want to rent it any less, right? They may, and if done in a more aggressive fashion, this ends up with a death spiral of people giving buildings back to banks. And that's not good for communities, because then they sit in receivership. And so no, vacancy taxes are counterproductive across the board.
Yeah, that does make sense. I understand if you're not keeping up your property, it's become a blight because it's not occupied. Like, yeah, you need to deal with that. We can't have that. But this doesn't sound like what that is. So like $350 a year, if you've got a ton of vacant units, that's just punishing them for trying to contribute to the economy and get them filled. So that's just bizarre. Well, Sean, good luck in Spokane. I wish you well.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting over here in the next several years, and we're excited to be here, and we look forward to welcoming all of our new RHA members who were formerly LLA members. So welcome aboard, and we look forward to fighting the good fight with you.
Yeah, well, I know that now more than ever, and now even commercial property management and owners need help as well. So, Sean, we appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Again, the Sean Flynn with the Rental Housing Association. I mean, the way the government tries to think about how to solve problems is insane to me. Like, you overtax businesses, you have all this bureaucracy for businesses, and then instead of looking at, okay, we need to help small businesses or whatever it is, instead of looking at what you're actively doing to small businesses and the things you're doing already to add to their costs as the government, you turn to, okay, who else can we penalize to help this person who we're already penalizing? It's insane. And this vacancy a vacancy fee is also insane. You have so many empty lease spaces. Some of that, yes, is holdover from the pandemic, but in areas like Seattle, you have people who don't want to operate businesses down there. And so, the building owner that, hey, I had this building and it was full when Seattle was in its prime, and, it wasn't filled with criminals and it wasn't a drug den, etc. And now, because of the city's policies, and you can apply this to Spokane too, because of the city's policies, we have all these vacant buildings. So now the city says, we screwed you over by making the city unlivable, and nobody wants to run a business there. So now we're going to fine you for having vacant storefronts that you can't fill. What an insane idea. I hope the city of Spokane puts that one in the trash and just leaves it there. All right, by the way, if you're a landlord, if you're a small, mid-sized landlord, make sure you check out RHA. We do this segment with them once a week to try to keep these issues in the spotlight ahead of the legislative session. But you can also become a member as a landlord of RHA for like $260 a year, and they can help you navigate all these insane laws. So rhawa.org, rhawa.org. All right, we've got a lot of show left. Man, we're going over, but it's fine. Yesterday was yesterday. So today we're going to do a little bit longer. We're going to talk about the head of DCYF. Maybe his time is up with the agency. And also, of course, we've got to talk about my home state of Minnesota and Governor Tim Walz, who is Kamala Harris's VP pick. But first, we saw this week absolute devastation on the stock market. We had Simone Del Rosario on the show yesterday with Straight Arrow News to help us make sense of what was going on in the markets and also some of those defense stocks. But this is just a good example of what happened this week of why you need someone managing your retirement portfolio who specializes in managing risk and in mitigating risk. I mean, there's always risk involved, right? But when you have someone who that's the lens through which they're looking at your retirement portfolio, you're going to get a different kind of service from them. And that's what Bulwark Capital Management and our friend Zach Abraham specialize in. When there are volatile events across the world and here locally with the elections and all of that, they're monitoring those things around the clock, and they're going to potentially make changes to your investments as a result of that. So Zach is the Chief Investment Officer at Bulwark Capital. He hosts the show, the Know Your Risk Radio podcast. He talks about managing risk all the time. It's their number one focus. So you can check out his show at knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com, and you can also learn about Bulwark's strategies with their free common sense investing guide. You can get yours by calling 866-779-RISK or go to knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24244. Go to knowyourriskradio.com. All right, has the time finally come? Is the writing finally on the wall for Ross Hunter, the head of Washington's Department of Children, Youth, and Families? Let's get to it in our segment, Unbelievable. Boop. All right, so last week there was bipartisan calls for Ross Hunter to resign, which I think is significant. It's only one Democrat that I know of so far calling for him to resign, or it was last week, but still, that makes it bipartisan. And in case you're not familiar with some of the issues around DCYF, we've been covering them on the show extensively, and they range from foster care system in absolute ruin to the juvenile detention system in chaos. And Ross Hunter is the man at the center of all of that, and he's doing a very, very bad job. So now, on top of the bipartisan calls for him to resign, this is from the Chronicle, the headline, State Advisory Board on Juvenile Justice asks Inslee to fire the Director of Children's Services over the issues at Green Hill. So Green Hill, they call it Green Hill School. It's just one of the state's 2 juvenile detention centers. And there has been a laundry list of issues there. You've had search warrants that had to be served on the facility for drug running, for involvement of staff in criminal conduct and in helping to facilitate criminal conduct. At the other juvenile detention facility, man, there's violent escapes from there, it seems like, every single year. And now, I think this is about 3-4 weeks ago, DCYF came out and said that we are not accepting any more juveniles to be booked into our juvenile detention facilities because we are understaffed and there are too many offenders in there as it is. And they say that that's leading to some of the issues around crime and disorder and escapes. Is not enough staff, too many inmates, we can't take anymore. So the juvenile detention system in our state is in free fall. It's a very, very serious situation. And now you have this state advisory board that's saying, if Ross Hunter won't resign, Governor Inslee needs to fire him. Now, they're coming at this from a different perspective. They're very, very progressive. And they're mad that a couple weeks ago, because of the overcrowding, some of the juveniles, they're adults, got moved out of Green Hill into the Department of Corrections, into adult prisons. And some on the left lost their minds over this because in Washington state, a law was passed that allows, under Governor Inslee, that allows offenders under the age of 25 to be housed in juvenile detention facilities, and you wonder why it's overcrowded? Like, a 25-year-old is not a juvenile. And so to me, maybe 21, but 21 to 25, they should be in an adult prison, in my opinion, which is what the show's about. So anyway, the Democrats passed this. Yeah, under 25, let them into the juvie. Well, now they're overcrowded because you have this youth crime crisis on our hands. And so when DCYF came out and said, no more, we can't take any more inmates. And in fact, we're going to take a couple dozen of the adult inmates who are at Green Hill, and we're going to put them in DOC. Well, that's why this advisory board wants Ross Hunter fired, is they don't like that these adults got sent to an adult prison because this group, you can tell, they just want to coddle juvenile offenders. So they said, this is to Governor Inslee, like begging him not to allow for, the law, they use it colloquially here, but the law that moved the age up to 25. They said, do not allow for it, one of the most progressive pieces of legislation that has crossed your desk and been affirmed by your signature, to become kindling in the fire of injustice that is actively being fanned by antiquated narratives that focus on the failures of young people rather than the systems that have been poorly positioned and resourced to serve them. So what they're trying to tell him there is, hey, I know a lot of people are angry that you're allowing juveniles, quote unquote, adults up to the age of 25 in juvenile facilities, but don't wind back that policy just because people are mad. It's the system that's the problem here. They said, although there is no way to undo the harm that has been caused, the Partnership Council does believe DCYF should commit to the following priorities that have been identified by the impacted youth in support of their transfer back to Green Hill. So they want these youth, they're not youth, they're adults. They want the ones who were taken out of juvenile detention and sent to adult prison. They want them, they are asking Inslee, like, hey, you need to listen to them. They need to be sent back to the juvenile facility. So it says, youth should return to Green Hill at the same level they were at when they were illegally transferred, so that they may resume the same privileges and access to programming they had before they were hastily removed. There should not be a waiting period, and they should not be required to re-earn their previous level. They go on to demand several young people have fully lost confidence in DCYF and do not feel safe returning to Green Hill. Youth who prefer to remain in DOC should not be forced to transfer back to the juvenile facility. Their possessions and account balances should immediately be transferred to them, and DOC should expedite their transfer out of WCC to the facility. So basically, they're making all these demands of, they just keep saying the impacted youth. No, these were adults who were able to stay in a juvenile detention facility instead of go to an adult prison where they belong. And now these people are throwing a tantrum over it. They said, in addition to the requests from the impacted youth above, the Partnership Council requests the following: immediately remove Ross Hunter as secretary and leave DCYF under interim leadership that is capable of a human-centered approach to managing the current crisis. And then establish a detailed plan to establish sustainable funding, for needs and immediate identification of resources to assist in remediating the current crisis, a clear process of repair and response to the harm caused to displaced youth, blah, blah, blah. So they want touchy-feely approach to the juvenile offenders and all of that, which is ridiculous. But in there, I think the nugget is they also want to see Ross Hunter removed. Now, I will say the 43 young people who were, Nicole, did you have something to tell me? You're mouthing something at me.
They want an apology to those criminals. They want him to
apologize.
apologize.
It says a clear process of repair for the harm caused. I just got sick of reading their stupid letter.
I know.
To the displaced youth, and a public apology by you and DCYF. So they want an apology to they're not youth. I don't know why they keep calling them youth. To the adults who had to go to an adult prison. Great. But the nugget in there is they want Ross Hunter fired. So I agree with them on that. Might be for different reasons, but I agree with them on that. So by the way, because we didn't cover this on the show, I think we might have touched on it just briefly. There was a court ruling that the 43 adult men and women, or adult men who were transferred to the adult prisons have to be sent back to juvenile detention, which is just crazy to me. So like everybody's whining like, oh, woe are these young men who have to go back to a juvenile facility. But remember, at least one of them committed a homicide. So you don't get lengthy prison sentences or lengthy sentences at our juvenile detention facilities unless you committed a very serious crime. These are offenders who are in there for very serious, often violent crimes. And now we need to coddle them and instead of put them in an adult prison where they should be as an adult and ease the burden so we can put more juvenile offenders in the juvenile system, we have to send them back because of an activist judge. So that's ridiculous. And in the meantime, it is causing a strain on staffing and resources because we already know Green Hill is understaffed and it's causing safety and security issues that we've seen play out in a significant way. And so now what has to happen? Well, the Department of Corrections has to take some of their guards and they have to work at Green Hill School to be able to offset the issues here. So this from King 5 News. Washington prison system loans corrections officers to troubled juvenile facilities. So DOC says DOC currently has 6 employees at Green Hill and will be on site as needed or when called to support safe operations of the campus. Because the inmates couldn't stay at DOC, the state has brought the DOC to them in the form of additional guards on loan from DOC at Green Hill. DCYF said at this point, all the young men who had been transferred have now been returned to its facilities. So all of this is a disaster. I mean, there are so many individual reasons why Ross Hunter should no longer have a job. You can go all the way back to the foster care system crisis, putting little tiny children back in homes with drug abusers using deadly drugs like fentanyl in the mishandling of that, or to this juvenile crime crisis. That is, I mean, only in the public sector would someone like Ross Hunter be allowed to keep a job. In the private sector, he would have been forced out a very, very long time ago. It is truly unbelievable. All right, really quickly in national news. You guys know I'm from Minnesota, right? I'm sure some of my family's happy about this. Some of them maybe not so happy. But Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota is Kamala Harris's VP choice. And I kind of predicted this a few days ago. I don't know if that was on the Sunday show. Because what did I say about Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro? He would outshine her. I mean, he would. And so I also heard apparently him and John Fetterman have beef. Like they're kind of political, you know, they've been not like beef because they're both Democrats. I
was going to say.
But competition, you know, they're like trying to outpower one another. Does that make sense? Like, oh, I'm salty because he's higher up than me or whatever it is. So anyway, apparently John Fetterman had warned Kamala Harris's campaign that Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania is out for himself. Like he's all about his own, you know, building his own star and his own reputation, and he wouldn't be in it for the right reasons, and he'd outshine Kamala Harris. But I agree that he's a better communicator. He's much smarter, more qualified in terms of, you know, being the governor and having to actually manage people in that position. So I don't think that would have been a good pick for her. But also Tim Walz is a terrible pick. Terrible pick. First of all, Minnesota is absolutely not a swing state. Like Minnesota is going to Democrats. So you don't need, like Josh Shapiro at least would have got you Pennsylvania. And Tim Walz is an extremist. He absolutely is very far left. And this is, you know, people are trotting out things he's said and done in the past. But just last week, he was on one of those like white dudes for Kamala Harris video chats where he was praising socialism. Here it is.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
When you call it socialism, I call it neighborliness. Like, look, if you want to be neighborly and you want to give someone else your money willingly, that's fine. But don't force the rest of us to do the same thing. So, and of course, there's going to be talk about how he mishandled the 2020 riots in Minneapolis. He's taken some, letting illegal immigrants get driver's license, although in Washington state, we have some of the same policies and some of the same behavior. But I heard somebody compare him to Jay Inslee. He's like Minnesota's Jay Inslee.
Oh.
And that's a very good, he's affable. He's like they were calling him folksy, which I kind of agree with. He comes off as like a regular speaking human.
Yes.
And so there's that appeal, but also you needed Kamala Harris, if I were advising her, which I would never do, you needed someone who could bring seriousness to her campaign, because she's very unserious. So you needed someone who could bring seriousness, gravitas, respect. That's not it.
Nope.
If you've ever heard this guy talk, that's not it. Like, he might be likable, but he has very extreme policies. So now you have two far left Democrats, two progressives on the same ticket. I don't understand who he brings into the equation. So now we've got two terrible candidates for presidency and two terrible vice presidency selections. I mean, I think we all realize J.D. Vance was a horrible pick. Like, that has flopped majorly. And Tim Walz, that's a horrible pick too, and it is going to flop majorly. And now, honestly, I don't know who's going to win.
We're all doomed.
I don't know. I'm so over it. All I care about is the governor's race here, the attorney general's race, and I'm just writing off the White House. It's just insane. We're all doomed. You're right.
Well, I mean,
no,
I
we're
still have
doomed.
this much
No,
hope.
we're doomed.
I have a little hope.
Absolutely not. We're doomed. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, there's a better choice in there. I'm still voting for Trump.
Well, I don't think that there's anything wrong with the Vance thing. I just don't think it brings anything to the
he's
ticket.
Kind of a dud.
That's what I mean. So I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's like this trouble. I don't think he's as scary as this guy, right? Because
of
this
course
guy's
not.
socialism views, this guy's agenda is scary. Where I don't think that's Vance. Vance is not scary to me. He's just kind of a didn't bring anything to the table thing.
He's a dud, and that's unfortunate. But there's a lot of duds this time around.
Actually, I mean, he seems like a good guy, military, and I mean, I watched his movie. Have you watched that yet?
I haven't. And no, he has an awesome background. I'm not saying his story isn't interesting. It's just not. He's not.
It's not bringing anything
there's no
to the
excitement.
ticket.
What excitement does it bring?
Right.
And I get it that compared to Donald Trump, I don't know that you could get a VP pick that was like sort of as interesting as Donald Trump. You don't need that though, right? But you do need someone who brings others in. That pick brings no one else in.
It should have been Haley, probably.
Yes,
I don't know why he didn't go there.
Oh, his ego's too big to pick Haley.
I
Never.
guess.
No, he can't put that. He can't put that beef behind him. Can't put that beef behind him. Anyway, it all sucks. I'm just right off 2024, and let's just look forward to 2028 at the presidential level. But we have a lot to be excited about. It's election day here. We have a lot to be excited about here. I'm not ready to write off Washington State, just Washington, D.C. All right, we're going to get to questions and comments next. But first, you remember earlier this summer, we partnered with Natchez RV Resort. They became one of our newest sponsors, and they were opening up a bunch of new lots in their phase 1 grand opening. Well, now they're into their phase 2 grand opening. So if you're also sick of politics and you just want to escape the insanity and you and your family want a luxury RV resort to be a part of, Natchez RV Resort is it for you. So they're having their phase 2 grand opening August 24th and 25th. They have 18 extra large RV lots starting at just $79,900. And I've been there. Mike and I stopped by when we were over in Eastern Washington. It really is a first-class resort. They have this massive 4,300 square foot clubhouse that they're just putting the finishing touches on, gourmet kitchen, plenty of room for visiting family and friends to hang out. They're putting in a pool and a hot tub. They've got a doggy obstacle course for your pet, and it's just absolutely beautiful out there. 300 days of sunshine, year-round family fun, fishing, hunting, snow skiing, golf, river rafting, wine tasting, all of it just minutes away. So don't miss out on phase 2 grand opening pricing, August 24th and 25th, with 18 extra large RV lots starting from just $79,900. And heck, you can have some undivided viewers as neighbors, because
And
we know
my aunt.
and Nicole's aunt, because in the first round they bought out there. So you'll have some sane neighbors. So NatchisRVResort.com, NatchisRVResort.com. All right, let's get to some questions and comments. On the election, Todd Welch says the chances of Pete Serrano winning in the AG's race are so slim, I would rather have Brown than Dingra. Now, I agree that Pete Serrano, he hasn't fundraised very well. I don't know what I'm not saying that he personally is sucked at fundraising. I'm saying that he hasn't brought a lot of money in. So that needs to be ramped up for sure. And we also know that right now there are no statewide elected officials on the entire West Coast. So yeah, it's an uphill battle for any of the Republicans running for statewide office to win this time around. But we kind of agree that Dingra would be the easier opponent for Pete. But I agree with the sentiment that she's so scary, I'd rather not even take the chance.
Yeah, because I'm not even sure about that, because I just don't think people pay enough attention to these details and how bad she is. But
Yeah,
I hope they do.
I hope they do too. But I think you would at least have a core group of people who have watched the news, who would understand. So extremists don't do well in statewide elected office. And that's why you have a Bob Ferguson who pretends he's a moderate, right? That's why when a race comes around that's a statewide office, Tiffany Smiley is a good example. When she ran for Senate, she was acting and very much ran as the establishment moderate Republican. Now that she's running in the 4th, she's like pro Donald Trump all the way. So that's why people moderate their views in statewide office.
Yeah, I mean, I hope either way Pete makes it through, because he's a really good guy, and we will talk to him more.
Oh yeah, he's an
assuming
awesome
he makes
guy.
it through today. So,
and we need a big change in that office. It is way too ideologically driven right now. And Monka, please.
Oh, please. But yeah, he's really down to earth. I just think he wants what's best for his kids and the state. So
yeah,
I like Pete.
You know, you can only hope that of every.
I know, but everybody else gets blogged by these ideals and all these other power related
hungry
things, and
narcissism.
He just seems like a normal guy that just wants to do better.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't seem like a narcissist. There's a lot of political candidates who I'm like, that is a strictly narcissism fueled campaign. That doesn't seem like it for me. On this Ferry story, which is wild, Carlene Heath says, you can't tell me that his son couldn't get his hands on a private boat. Let's not forget about the barefoot bandit. True.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the ferry captain's assertion that, well, he can't get off the island anyway because I'm the ferry captain that gets people off the island, and I get that, but there are other boats besides the ferry boat. Brandon Robillard, it's almost as if every time he talked about the multi-million-dollar ferry, he didn't say it'd be a shame if something were to happen. It's almost as if
like a threat.
Oh, yeah, right? Like, oh, I'll sink this thing if you put my son in prison. Anton Volter says, I know WSF is short on staff, but he should be fired, and he would have all the time in the world to visit his son. Yeah, that's very true, too. Like, you can visit your son quite a bit if you don't have a job. And I don't like to encourage anyone to get fired, but multiple things he did during that testimony were worthy of him being fired. He's a state employee, paid for with taxpayer funds. What he did is ridiculous. So we want an urgent response from the Washington State ferry system. Independent Men United said ferry workers aren't even supposed to wear their uniform off duty at all to a store even, which makes sense. I think there's a lot of limitations on where police can wear their uniforms off duty. I think if you're doing it, to or from work as a matter of course, there's some exceptions, right? But this is clearly.
Yes.
This is clearly
very
inappropriate.
Obvious, his intent.
Well, I can't get over that audio. It's just wild. Let me see. Oh, Greg Oleka says, inquiring minds want to know what happened with his bail. I'm sorry for not saying that. I am just not a very good host today. $250,000. So prosecutors wanted $500,000. He ended up getting $250,000, which, I don't think any amount of bail is high enough for somebody who allegedly possesses and distributes child pornography, but $250,000 comparatively seems about right. Tam G says, rather than confront the drug abuser's bad behavior, this is about, Spokane. Tam G says, rather than confront the drug abuser's bad behavior, they're going to have taxpayers fund commercial failures as well as paying for the active drug users to be housed. Taxpayers are supposed to prop up both sides. Sergeant Pickles, Spokane is getting more blue because people with common sense can just move over the border in Idaho but still keep their jobs. Yeah, that's pretty true. That's true, I think, of one of my fears about this election cycle is we've lost too many people with common sense who have given up and decided to move out of state. All right, on the Green Hills School, Amy Robertson says, and let's not forget the employees and unions vote of no confidence of Ross as well. I forgot about that. Yeah. Nobody wants Ross Hunter to have that job. I get it for Inslee that, he's only got a couple more months left in office and a new governor will appoint someone new. But that doesn't mean you can't terminate him. And a temporary head would be just as efficient, even if they weren't efficient or effective at all.
Then you could take credit for putting somebody else in there. But I think they're buddies. Everybody is very aware that Ross and Inslee are buddies. And I was just trying to calm down a family member that's dealing with DCYF right now. And she's very frustrated. And I was like, couple months, because I think even if Ferguson gets in, Ross is out.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, and usually we have a new governor. You're going to want to pick new heads of the agencies because that's one of the big things that you get to do. And, for instance, the head of the State Patrol, John Batiste, he's been in there for years and years and years. And I think he's just waiting out the Inslee administration. So whoever the next governor is, there are going to be some serious shakeups at the head of the state agencies. And Ross Hunter obviously won't have a job anymore. I mean, unless he is also best friends with Bob Ferguson, who won't be governor because Dave Reichert will be governor.
That's right.
So, this is all just a moot point. This conversation doesn't even mean anything. All right, we are going to get to our closing sanity check, which you already know what it is. It can be very short and simple. But first, if you need to save some money right now, you've looked at your family's budget and you can't freaking eliminate anything else. Well, take another look at your insurance, or better yet, have First Mark Insurance take another look at your insurance by scheduling time to take the First Mark Challenge, which so many Undivided viewers and listeners have done. It's very simple. You set aside a little time, talk to them over the phone about your current insurance, your insurance needs. They go out for free. They shop the market for you. They've got a lot of carriers at their disposal. They come back and they give you their recommendations. They might tell you, heck, your insurance is pretty good and we can't get you insurance that's any better than that, so keep what you have. That happens. Or they might say, hey, we can get you better insurance for the same price or better insurance for a lower price. Mike and I were very happy. We did the First Mark Challenge. We got better insurance for the same price. And we've heard from multiple viewers who got huge savings by doing the First Mark Challenge. Casey in Covington says that they managed to save his family 37% off their auto quote for the exact same coverage. He said, right now, every dollar counts. Happy to join the First Mark family. So schedule time to take the First Mark Challenge today. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. Man, are we almost through the show after the meltdown without issues? Hashtag blessed.
Jinx us.
I guess we have another live show
that we need to do today.
But let's put a bow on this one first with our closing sanity check. Vote. 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 That's my closing sanity check. For the love of God, every single person who watches this show, I know you are independent-minded. I know you have a brain. I know you care about this state of ours, and I know that you're going to vote for sane people. So please, if you're thinking, oh, it's the primary election, I'll vote in the November election, or I'm busy, or I've got this and this, please make time to vote today. Please make time to get those ballots in. The people who get to decide the direction of our state are the people who participate in the process. And if the last 40 years is any indication, it's been the progressives who've been participating in the process the most. So get your ballots in. Make sure you put them in a ballot drop box and do not put them in a USPS box at this point because we don't know if that's going to be picked up or not. So a reminder, we will have a live election night special coming up tonight at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. You can join us right here as we go through all of the results after the first ballot drop. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. Did you have something to say? Who wants
vote?
Daryl.
That's it. Just vote.
Vote. That's a good one, Daryl.
That's it.
Thank you. Nicole, anything from you?
Oh, vote.
Great.
Go vote.
You guys got your ballots
if
in?
you can't find your ballot, then you can print one off. There are ways.
That's a good thing to say quick, that you can go to your county website, whatever county you're in, your election website, and you can print what I think they call a provisional ballot. I had to do it one year. I believe I lost my ballot, so I had to print one. You literally print it off, and then you turn it in, so there's a way to do it. So if you haven't, I also heard from people who haven't received a ballot yet, which is a problem, but you need to go on your county website and get a provisional ballot and print that off and get it in a drop box today. All right, we will see you back here at 8:30 p.m. tonight for our live election coverage. Tell your friends. I mean, it's going to be the only election coverage in town that doesn't suck. I promise you that. In the meantime, if you'd like to support our show, you can do that for just $5 a month at undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. See you back here tonight at 8:30. Get the ballots in.
undividedpod.com.
That's good, girl. Nicole, anything to add? Anything you want to whisper sultrily into the microphone?
Not really.
Gosh.
I'm hungry.
I also am hungry. I would like to eat too. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. No, wait, tonight. Oh my gosh. Is my mic still on? We'll see you tonight. 8:30. 8:30. Oh, shoot. It went so well, too. It was going so well.